Hey there, guys. I told myself and told you guys that I was going to read chapter 2, and that's what I'm going to do along with the video that is also being uploaded today. I'm going to go ahead and read over chapter 2, and here goes. I have visited many different 12-step meetings where recovering alcoholics and addicts meet to provide comradeship and support to each other. At those meetings, when the members take turns speaking to the group, I hear in their speeches and conversations the struggles of members who only have a year or two of sobriety. At the last meeting I attended, a member was receiving his one-year chip for having maintained his sobriety for 12 months. And he gave a little speech to the 150 of us in attendance. His speech was filled with emotion and gratitude as he told us an impassioned story of how he was maintaining his sobriety each day. When I awaken each morning, he said, the first thing that happens is that my knees hit the floor and I'm begging God for another day of sobriety. The second thing I do is call my sponsor to get a program for that day's activities. I call my sponsors for support 5 times during that day, and after dinner I go to an AA meeting, and before I get into bed that night, my last act is to drop to the floor and thank God for another day of sobriety. Staying sober is what I work at all day long. I was moved by his passion, by his sincerity, and by his powerful drive. I felt tremendous respect for that courageous young man who was winning his struggle to remain sober. However, I couldn't help but think to myself, that boy needs treatment. Was he living a relaxed, calm life, free of the fear of relapse? Every day, every hour of every day, he was struggling to remain sober, with the dark specter of relapse hovering over him like the wings of a living evil force. In contrast to that young man's condition, I thought of 2 graduates of passages with whom I had spoken that morning. One had just completed 4 months of sobriety, while the other had completed 2.5 years and had recently married. Both had called to say hello and to reconnect with us. Both were out in their respective communities lending assistance to others who were still struggling to become sober. Both reported that they had become more productive in their line of work than ever before. Neither was struggling to stay sober. Being sober was a natural part of their lives. They are the product of an entirely new point of view in treatment therapy, a new paradigm. In bold text, a new paradigm. A paradigm is a system, model, pattern, or example. In this case, the paradigm deals with a belief system, one that comprises everything generally held to be true, and one that you might believe to be true about alcoholism and addiction. For centuries, the fundamental belief held across most civilized cultures was that alcoholism was a moral failing or demonic possession. Those who drank alcohol to the point that it interfered with work and social life were shunned. For people who were not such heavy drinkers, the answer naturally appeared to be moderation of drink. They believed that those who could not abstain clearly demonstrated a weakness of moral fiber. Alcoholics were, and in large part remain, objects of scorn. The lies, deceptions, disappointments, and heartbreak that surrounded the alcoholic's plea, "Give me one more chance, next time it will be different," have been around for centuries. Much of the world still labors under those concepts. In 1874, Benjamin Rush first described alcoholism as a disease. In 1935, 2 pioneers in the field of alcoholism set about to create a fellowship where alcoholics could support each other in recovery. Primarily interested in keeping their own fledgling sobriety going and helping others to do the same, Bill Wilson and Robert Smith, M.D., co-founded Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. Wilson and Smith's novel concept was the biological aspect of alcoholism. They described alcoholism as an allergy of the body. One of their first successes was to change the prevalent view of alcoholism from a moralistic failing to a medical illness. Just as people were not responsible from a moral standpoint for contracting tuberculosis or cancer, neither were they morally responsible for their alcoholism. The trouble was, and still is, that while AA did a wonderful thing in eliminating the degrading concept of sinner, they replaced the word sinner with the equally degrading concept of alcoholic. In 1956, the American Medical Association, AMA, named alcoholism as a disease. Throughout the world today, the existing primary paradigm regarding alcoholism and addiction is not only that they are diseases, but also that they are incurable. We're told that even if we were to stop abusing substances, the disease would continue and we would be addicts or alcoholics forever. It is that belief that is primarily responsible for the stagnation that has existed for the past 70 years or so in the treatment of alcoholism and addiction. It is that paradigm that has given birth to those two terrible and untrue slogans. Once an alcoholic or addict, always an alcoholic or addict, and relapse is part of recovery. It is my intention to change that paradigm in your mind and perhaps throughout the world. Innovators in any field who have brought about revolutionary changes report that long-standing paradigms are exceedingly difficult to eradicate and replace with new paradigms. However, eradicate and replace we must if we are to survive. In the early part of the 20th century, there was a paradigm regarding the 4-minute mile. It was said, and almost everyone believed it, that it was impossible for a human to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Doctors of that era said that the human psychology would break down and kill a runner before that could be accomplished. Engineers said that the aerodynamics of a human body made it impossible for someone to run a mile in under 4 minutes. It seemed that the belief must be true because no matter how many thousands of runners attempted it, they all failed. That's the power of a paradigm. It cripples everyone who believes in it and makes it seemingly impossible to break through to the other side. Yet on May 6, 1954, Roger Bannister ran a mile in 3 minutes 59.4 seconds. He broke through the existing paradigm. 6 weeks later, John Landy, an Australian, ran the mile in 3 minutes 58 seconds, and by the end of 1957, 16 more runners had run the mile in less than 4 minutes. Today, many runners regularly run the mile in less than 4 minutes, and one man, John Walker, has done so more than 100 times. The current world record is 3 minutes 43.13 seconds, held by the Moroccan Hicham El Guerreros, who established it July 7, 1999. Once the old paradigm was smashed and a new paradigm was created, running the mile in less than 4 minutes became a common occurrence. It's not that the runners were faster or stronger, it's that they knew it could be done. That's what happens to a paradigm when a hole is blown in it. Everyone pours through the gap in the new way of thinking. Now it is your turn to end your existing thought paradigm about alcoholism and addiction and you. You are not an alcoholic or an addict. You are not incurably diseased. You have merely become dependent on substances or addictive behavior to cope with underlying conditions that you are now going to heal. At which time your dependency will cease completely and forever. Alcoholism and addiction are not diseases. When Pax and I were doing what you are doing now, searching desperately for help, we talked to psychologists, psychiatrists, interventionists, drug and alcohol counselors, and addiction specialists. They would tell us that rubbish that alcoholism and addiction were incurable. At first, we relied on their judgment because they were the experts, and as a result, Pax and I suffered great hopelessness and despair. Although in my heart I never believed it, and I would tell Pax that they were wrong because I didn't want him to feel that there was no hope. As the years were passed and I gained more insight, information and experience with Pax and others who were addicted, I came to understand that alcoholism and addiction were not diseases at all, but responses to underlying conditions. Then, every time I heard someone hand out the same disease line, I would get so mad that I would feel like spitting nails. After several years of hearing that, I wanted to get up and shake people who were repeating those statements and ask them to wake up and think, we heard the same thing from nearly everyone we spoke to. It's as if they had all gone to the same school and learned it from the same teacher. It made me feel as if I had gone back to the Dark Ages, and that next day they were going to recommend bloodletting as a remedy. Today, having healed hundreds of people just like you in packs, I can write with complete certainty that alcoholism and addiction are not diseases. If alcoholism and addiction are not diseases, what are they? The short answer is that they are names used to describe the states in which we find ourselves after we've used alcohol or addictive drugs for a long period of time to have developed a dependency on them, meaning that we can't permanently discontinue their use without help. Alcohol and drugs are not the problems, they are what people are using to help themselves cope with the problems. Those problems always have both physical and psychological components. Anything from anemia, hypoglycemia, or a sluggish thyroid to attention deficient disorder. Brainwave pattern imbalances or deep emotional pain. You will be reading later about the steps to recovery that addresses these causes. But foundational to them all is this key premise. When the underlying problems are discovered and cured, the need for alcohol or drug disappears. I would like to see the word alcoholism eliminated from the English language as well as the labels alcoholic and addict. There is a stigma attached to them. The word alcoholism alone has a whole world of grim meaning attached to it. We've been inundated with studies of alcoholism, theories about alcoholism, lectures about alcoholism, stories of alcoholism, and essays on alcoholism. When all that has really happened is that people have become dependent on alcohol to cope with their underlying conditions. Alcohol is just a quick and easy way to change ordinary, everyday reality from unbearable to bearable. All it takes is a short trip to the liquor store and a few drinks. People who are dependent are merely using alcohol as a crutch to get through the day. Yet doctors and scientists are still treating alcoholism as if it is the problem, when it has nothing at all to do with the problem. They might as well be studying scratchism for people who have a chronic itch. Suppose you had a chronic itch and scratched it regularly throughout the day. Would you have scratchism? Would you be a scratchaholic? Of course not. What if you had a constant headache, and to cope with it, you took a aspirin several times each day? Would you suffer from aspirinism, and would you be called an aspirinaholic? More important, if you sought help for treatment of those ailments, would you be treated for scratchism or aspirinism? Of course not. You would be treated for the underlying conditions that led you to scratch or use aspirin. Perhaps poison ivy or stress. All dependency is a symptom, not a problem. It's much easier to cure someone of a dependency than to try to cure an alcoholic who has the incurable disease of alcoholism. The same is true for curing an addict. A woman from Australia came to us with a severe drinking problem. While she was in treatment, we learned that her husband had forced her to participate in strange and demeaning sexual practices, and that in some of those practices he would beat her. Her self-esteem had been trampled. She had become demoralized and humiliated, and she didn't know what to do about it. She became a heavy drinker and was hospitalized several times. Her psychiatrist suggested a treatment center because she was a prominent figure in Australia. They looked for a center outside the country and found passages. After some cautious and gentle probing, we were able to uncover the cause of her misery and shame. We were also able to help her find the courage to resolve that she would never let her husband abuse her again. We then brought her husband in for counseling and learned that he actually thought she secretly enjoyed his strange sexual practices and physical abuse. When he learned otherwise, he was ashamed of what he had done, and because he truly loved his wife, He promised that he would never harm her or subject her to that strange behavior again. They are both happier than ever before, and neither one uses alcohol. I received this letter a year after she had been in treatment. My dearest Chris, 12 months have passed since I returned to Australia from passages. 12 blessed months of peace and love. I had thought for several years before going to passages that life had played a terrible trick on me, that it was not worth living, and I contemplated taking my life as a way out of my heartbreaking situation. I'm such a prominent figure here down under that I could not take the chance of seeking help here. And that turned out to be the greatest blessing of all. There is no place in Australia that offers even a small percentage of what you and Pax put together in Malibu. Your staff is beyond comparison. I cannot imagine how you assembled them all under one roof. I'm not particularly religious, but I am deeply spiritual, and surely, if there is a God, I suspect that God lives in Malibu and watches over you and your wonderful facility. Not only has there not been a recurrence of those terrible events of my past, but my husband has gone to the greatest lengths to show me that he truly loves me. He speaks of passages reverently, as if it was he who went there for a month instead of me. I cannot express my gratefulness in words. There are none that are adequate, but suffice it to say that I think of you and your staff every day. I am in regular contact with 8 out of the 11 others who were in my group, and 2 have been here to visit me. We all feel the same about you and passages. You and Pax are our personal heroes. Your dedication to creating and maintaining the finest facility in the world is totally appreciated. And we, for a few, believe you have done exactly that. I send this letter along with my love. Please say hello to everyone there. I will be at the reunion this July. Your friend Emily. If I were to create a word that more accurately describes alcoholism and addiction, I would say it was dependencyism. Sounds silly, doesn't it? Yet it's no sillier than the word alcoholism. The reason the word alcoholism no longer sounds silly to you is because you are used to hearing it, reading it, and thinking about it. The reason dependencyism sounds silly is because this is the first time you've seen it in print. Imagine this conversation. What's wrong with you? Oh, I have dependencyism. Dependencyism? What's that? Is it contagious? From here on, you'll see that I frequently refer to both alcoholism and addiction as dependency. Dependency can be to alcohol, addictive street drugs, addictive prescription drugs, or even certain behaviors. I'm not going to deal specifically with dependency on sex, gambling, food, cutting, or any other behavior that you may have chosen to help you cope with your life. But in nearly every case, what applies to drug and alcohol dependency applies to other dependencies as well. Reading this book will open your mind to new ways of thinking that will cause you to see your dependency and perhaps your entire life in a whole new light. It will help you understand that all dependency is a symptom, not a problem. Seeing your dependency in the new light will enable you to heal yourself more quickly and more effectively than ever before and permanently. I'm going to stop right there. We are on page 20 of the Alcoholism and Addiction Cure, and later on we will start with the self-punishment syndrome. And that was a good read. Lots of things people have gone through and overcome over time with fellowship and communication with someone who cares. So that's an awesome chapter 2 read. So I'm going to stop right there. And this is the Alcoholism and Addiction Cure book. How to heal the underlying causes, how to end relapse, and how to end suffering. Thank you guys for listening. I'm going to stop right there, and we're going to read more on chapter 2 some other time. I've been uploading every single day, so I'm probably going to take a day or 2 break instead of uploading so much. So I got 2 videos coming out today, and I hope everybody has a wonderful March, and love you guys. Thank you for listening, and I cannot wait to get to meet some people. I'm going to be starting my own NA recovery meeting, and hopefully getting to see and listen to other people speak as well as I want to speak to other people and figure out who they are and their stories and past experiences. Thank you guys so much. I love you guys. Thank you for listening. You guys are beautiful. You guys are wonderful. Thank you.